Welcome to episode 81 of Masters of the Forge. It's me, Adam, and with me I have Jason.
Hello, everyone. I'm back.
And Gav. Welcome back, Gav.
Hi, nice to talk to you again.
Awesome. We're glad to have you on. So this episode, we're going to be talking about, again, The Beast Arises. The Beast Must Die, in specific. But first, as usual, we have a kind author on. We'd like to spend the first part of the show, instead of talking about what we've been up to, why don't we talk about what Gav's been up to? What have you been up to, Gav? Anything exciting that you can divulge? What's coming up for Gav Thorpe?
I'm trying to think of the exciting bits that I can divulge.
Well, I have the hard drive hot list right here in case.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. Available from my newsletter. Yeah.
So you're doing Lorgar, right?
That's right. Yes, I've just done the edits on that and sent that back to the editors.
Oh, right. Cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Doing the Primarchs novel. Bit different as well.
Are those all set at the same time period, or are those different? Are they all pre-heresy or after heresy, or what's up with that?
Well, the series is set whenever. They're all sort of a definitive story of that Primarch. So depending on what's already been written, some of them will be origin stories, some will be a moment during the heresy or the crusade, potentially even during the scouring. It's something that's an archetypical story about that Primarch.
Mm-hmm.
So for Lorgar, it was a case that, between sort of the first heretic and betrayer, the kind of big conversion kind of story had been told. There was no point going back to that and writing it again in a slightly different way or things like that. So sort of in cahoots with the series editor, or the Heresy series editor, Laurie Goldin, kind of came up with an idea to go right back. So before the Emperor even comes to Colchis. And it's the story of Cor Ferron and Lorgar, and how they rise to head the Covenant on Colchis. So, but it's kind of framed by just sort of like 4 interstitial chapters, which are set kind of, during the Great Crusade, really, because it's kind of just before and after Monarchia.
Right.
So, so they kind of set the scene in terms of what happened later, and it's one of those stories that is kind of, it's as much about sort of like Cor Ferron's view of Lorgar and how that kind of changes over time, and also, and about Lorgar's origins himself. So there's bits of it set kind of during the Great Crusade, but the majority of the story is pre-Crusade.
All right, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's nice to get that point of view, not only from a different era, but also it's nice to have. I think it's nice to have a point of view from perhaps not the character themselves. You can keep some things kind of secret longer without actually having to delve directly into the mind of the main character.
Yeah, I mean, this is, definitely, and that was very much at the start of the heresy. That was the approach to the Primarchs, which has kind of changed a bit. I sort of went into Corax's head with Deliverance Lost and things, but originally, sort of with Lorgar, there were going to be some scenes with his point of view and things. But actually, when I was writing it, it made more sense that there weren't actually, and most of it's from the point of view of these 2 characters. There's Cor Ferron, and there's a slave called Nyros. Who are kind of these 2 competing, devil and angel on his shoulders kind of figures. Not quite that clear cut in terms of the morality, but they're both trying to use him and turn him to their cause, sort of thing. So you actually only ever see Lorgar through their eyes, rather than what's going on inside his head himself.
Right.
So that's quite cool as well, just introducing the Primarch, but only ever through the perspective of others.
Right, and it's. For me, I like when you have someone as iconic as Lorgar or anyone else who's larger than life, especially to those around him. A lot of the time, it's what they tell those people that is more interesting, or what they aren't telling them, and you can judge how genuine the things he says are by what he says and how they react. And you a lot of the time I feel like that's a better way to go with big characters like that, for sure.
Yeah, and definitely when you've got, especially with sort of like the Primarchs and some of the heresy characters, when you know where they're going, or, people who are already fans of the background kind of know where they're going, actually, you can use that to create tension with the reader, because they know they're being disingenuous or lying or have got a different agenda, because they know how the story ends, but actually how they're acting or what they're saying, even though you can't see into their head, you know they're doing something different to what actually they're portraying themselves as. And that's a good way of creating tension in a series where people kind of know what's going to happen in many cases.
Like, what do they call it? Literary, what's it called? Irony, literary irony. I think that's what that's called. And also I think it's more interesting too. It's more interesting to kind of to have a conversation about something that happened instead of describing what the character's thinking in their head. Like, I've been dabbling a little bit with some writing and stuff, and it certainly seems like if you have an internal monologue, it's way more boring to read that than have a character tell another character what happened and give his opinion, and you get feedback from the other character, and sometimes you find yourself learning about what you're writing as you're writing it from other characters. Very weird. Very weird. So you also have Jane Czar. Is the Jane Czar book out? I feel like I saw a cover for that.
Yeah, I think that's another couple of months. Yeah, I've no idea when the release is for Lorgar. I think we've got, well, in terms of releases, the next thing coming up, we've got Azrael has just kind of come out. I think in the, I don't know whether the regular hardback's out yet. The special edition's out, and so we've got the different editions of that coming out. The next thing out actually in a couple of weeks, well, sort of in February, is The Darker Road, which is an Asherman audio, which is sort of a nice little... I actually wrote it ages ago when I did Asherman Hand of Assyrian, but it's only just getting released now as sort of prep for Jane Czar. So Jane Czar, I think, is later in the spring, sort of springtime. Not quite exactly sure, maybe sort of April, May time, I think. But that was really fun to write. Going back to the Eldar, but having...
It's very exciting to get depth from Eldar releases, and I think the next couple months or so are really giving us what a lot of players really want. And it's like, yeah, it's really nice that I can shoot 87 trillion scatter lasers at my enemy, but how about let's learn a little bit more about these, millions of years old societies and how they're gonna hopefully pull themselves out of this spiral of non-existence that they're
well, that's very much the angle for the Phoenix Lords books and some of the stuff going forward, which is it's a two-tier kind of story, really, as I did with Asherman, which is there's, for want of a better term, a current day story, and then there's also the origin story, I suppose, alongside it, set during the fall and the founding of the aspect shrines and the path and things. So Jane Czar, because it's a full-length novel, so it's sort of 90,000 words rather than Asherman, which was 50,000. I've got a lot more space to explore those two things, and with all the Phoenix Law stuff, it's emphasising the mythology behind it as well. These characters are myths come to life. They're acting out a part as much as they are just sort of like warriors and individuals. So they're part of these grand cycles of legend and things. And when you start playing around with that, you get some really cool ideas and adventures that can go on and battles they'll get involved in, which are more like Jason and the Argonauts or Gilgamesh or something. It's that kind of thing. It's not just, well, I'm a commander and I hit people over the head, or hard surprise tactics or whatever it might be. It's actually, I'm part of a recurring myth cycle which determines the fate of an entire species.
Right. So look for Jane Czar to be placed on the bookshelf alongside the Silmarillion, I guess, or
Not quite that, I don't think it's. But yeah, there's elements of that, I suppose.
That's great.
The creation myths and stuff, and we'll be seeing more of that. I suppose again, one of those things not talking about too much, but I think it's kind of been hinted at with some of the things from the Gathering Storm, sort of like the Iandan storylines that could be coming soon. There's a lot. There's a lot of mythic chickens coming home to roost.
Yeah, it's we did an episode on Iandan a couple months ago, I think, and it was a very, very interesting background. Everything's happened quite recently, and more recent than I had expected, because when you're just playing the game and you're just learning all this lore, like this time of ending that the last, I think it's 250 years, a lot of things are packed. Like pretty much anything Tyranid related is in there. Like pretty much anything Necron related was in the past 50 years or so. Some ridiculous number like that. So stuff is really starting to go down, and Iandan is an obvious choice for kind of this a catalyst, the character that lights the fire in which everything burns, kind of.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yes. Yeah.
So
the other interesting thing with Jane Czar, because although I called it the current day story, actually the non-full story takes place before the Horus Heresy. So because the kind of the conceit for the series is that Phoenix Lords get sort of summoned together at the start of the novels, and then from various parts across their timeline, so across 11,000 years of history, and then sent forth again on these various missions that they've had these visions about to avert a disaster of the Eldar. And they don't talk about it outside of the shrine, because it's all about timelines crossing and fate and all this kind of stuff. But so basically, Jane Czar's mission and the timeline she's in is actually not that long after the fall. So she's still, the craft worlds are still being founded, really, and the path is relatively new. And there's cool stuff. She goes to Camorra and all this kind of thing. So it's quite exciting to, in the same way that sort of like the Heresy or the Beast Arises look at a different time period of something we take for granted. With Jane Czar and the Phoenix Lords, we get to again, as well as the Fall, which we don't know a lot about, but it's kind of established. Actually, it's like, well, it's not like the Society of the Elder as we know it now in 40k sprang fully into being after the Fall. There were hundreds, thousands of years of that developing, of seers and the path and everything else coming together. So we get to explore that part as well.
That's
which
cool.
Is 1,000 years after the Fall, so it's still a big jump in time. But
excellent. So what else do you have up? I see a couple things on here. I'm assuming 40k Space Wolves. That looks like we're not allowed to hear anything about that.
Yeah, well, that's just it's the idea is it will be a Space Marine Battles novel. It's not actually on. It was on the schedule, but it's not. It's going to probably move down the schedule a little bit more. But I've got a cool idea for it. But sort of spinning off some of the stuff that was in the 13th Wolf audio that I did for Horus Heresy, but that's kind of moved back down the line now.
What is Scrape to Victory and Vengeance of the Immortal about? Can you tell us?
Scrape to Victory is a Blood Bowl story.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
I'm not sure when that's coming out. It'll be tied in with something about a hapless Skaven player trying to make it to the big leagues.
Oh my god, that's gonna
Vengeance of the Immortal is an Adeptus Titanicus story.
Oh, cool.
Again, not fixed for any particular time of release that I know of at the moment, but obviously we know that the Specialist Games guys are working on doing Adeptus Titanicus sometime probably later this year.
That's awesome.
So I think there'll be, as there were some Blood Bowl stories in the Advent stories before Christmas from Black Library, and it's kind of I don't know if they're particularly planning any novels and things, but certainly with Adeptus Titanicus, there's a few more Titan-related stuff coming out. I think David Annandale has done. Well, he's done the Binary Secession, I think, which is a Heresy audio, but also he's doing Warlord something or other. So I think that's a Titan-related story. So hopefully I'm going to do another Titan-related novel further down the line, but that one's just a short story at the moment.
Yeah.
I love Titans.
David Annandale's our BFF because he was the first person. He was the first author on our show, and he signed our books, and we follow him on Twitter. So clearly that means we're BFFs. So
yeah, that's right.
All right, great. That's awesome. I want to know, after I was looking at some of this stuff coming up, and I was, what is Snowbooks? Is that a third party? Is that like another house that you do books for? Like, what kind of stories are those?
Yeah, I mean, well, Snowbooks, yeah, they're sort of, you call them indie press, I suppose. They're not quite, they do kind of fairly short run prints and ebooks and things like that. They've been going for quite a while, though, but they're quite good at doing anthologies and novellas and stuff like that. Cool. And they work with quite a bit with Jonathan Green, who is a former Black Library author and that worked on Fighting Fantasy game books and all that sort of thing. So he's edited a couple of books for them. So the one we've got at the moment, which just launched today on Kickstarter, is Shark Punk 2.
That sounds glorious.
Which is yeah. So go and check that out and go and pledge for that. So it's a sequel, as it were, of anthology, but a whole load of authors that you'd know. Actually, I think David Annandale's in there, David Geimer, Guy Haley.
Geimer, is that how you pronounce it? All right, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks.
As far as I know, he's not corrected me yet, but I don't know if I've ever said it to him. So,
well, it's kind of along the same vein as Robot Girly Man. It's like, well, how do you even pronounce this? So that's good. I'm glad we had that. So that's good. So it's like one of those things where they put out a call for authors and folks submit, and they do an anthology of the stories. Is that kind of
yes, that's right. So this one, so this is the second one, but I did one for them with them before called Game Over, which was which was all inspired by stories inspired by video games. Yep. So I did a riff on Donkey Kong, basically. Quite a fun story.
Yeah, I've been meaning to pick that one up.
Horror thriller story based on Donkey Kong.
That sounds cool.
There's all that kind of thing. So the Shark Puck ones are basically just shark-inspired stories. You know, some with a literal shark, some of them, about serial killers or about, something shark-esque. They're not necessarily literal sharks. Mm-hmm. They might be literary sharks or that sort of thing. So my one for Shark Punk 2 is kind of riffs off the Jaws storyline, the Jaws plot, but is more about whether there's a serial killer in this who essentially thinks he's a shark, attacking people in this seaside resort during holiday season, and whether, but deliberately kind of playing off the beats in Jaws and things like that. So
that's cool. You could almost do like a space one, where it's like a spaceship or something. Everybody's kind of like Jaws 2, where they're trapped on the rafts.
Definitely.
You could do something like that. Wow, yeah. Right, these things write themselves.
Well, yeah, some of them do. Yeah. So when there's obviously there was a lot because so if you're back on Kickstarter, there's like essentially a free ebook of about another 6 stories I think thrown in. So there's 25 stories I think in total that you can get, all themed around shark fun.
Okay, so I guess
there's bound to be a sci-fi one or two in there. I suspect.
Just search for Snowbooks or Shark Punk 2 on Kickstarter and check it out. This will be out soon, so should still be plenty of time. Is there anything else coming up, Gav? I know that you're working on a game for a convention. Is this like game are you doing it just for the convention or for your own personal enjoyment or all of the above? Or
at the moment, that's the idea. It's as I kind of put in sort of like the blog that I've just done about it and stuff. It's at the moment to stop myself getting carried away about what I want to do with it. It's a case of, no, I want to make this game and have fun with it and play it with some friends, and I'm going to demo it at this convention in a couple of weeks' time and kind of keep it just manageable. So it's not like I've got some grand plan of, and it's going to have a range attached to it and this is what it's going to look like and everything. Yeah. I want it to just grow organically from playing games and having fun with it. So it's unsubtly titled Big Stompy Robots.
I think that's just the perfect game. It's really just the perfect title.
Yeah, it works for us. We approve.
So yeah, I've just put out the first. I've got a specific Big Stompy Robots newsletter. So I think the first one's just going out, kind of tonight or tomorrow, which has kind of got an update on that and a little video gameplay introduction to the basics of the game and things. But yeah, I've got this. There's a show, a new show in Nottingham, which is just down the road, called Robin, Red on Blue in Nottingham, and I'm doing like a little seminar there. But as well as that, I said, I'd run a participation game, just to the point to force myself into doing something like this. And then rather than picking one of the games that I had kind of almost finished or I could have done, I decided to just create a new one from scratch, which was possibly foolish. But I'm having a lot of fun with it, actually, and I'm painting up some cool mech models and things from just different places and making a board for that and getting my full hobby on, which is good, actually. It's nice to kind of get back and just back to basics, really, of just creating a game from scratch.
You know, this almost seems like almost a cousin or a predecessor of, at least conceptually, of open combat, because it seems like I'm just going to grab whatever big stompy robots I have in my house and I'm going to make them fight.
That's exactly it. Again, that idea of just, I want to collect some cool models. And I don't want to have to worry about particularly whether they're going to fit with the rules, because the rules are flexible enough. So essentially, there's a bunch of cards which just represent the different weapons and systems on your mech. So it's completely modular and customizable. So the models I've got at the moment are just a couple of the Empyrean Hunters from the Maelstrom Edge range. So they're a nice size. But I've got an Infinity Cutter. I've got a couple of Pig Iron Productions War Droids. I've just ordered some of the Heavy Gear Blitz stuff. So of that kind of size, I've sort of honed in on it being basically supposedly about 10 mil scale.
Okay.
But that's kind of flexible, really, for whatever people want to put. Where other people, that's where I've ended up, because it kind of fits with some of the terrain I had around. And I've been through various short stories and things. I've been developing a bit of a universe, sort of like a sci-fi setting, where these battles will be taking place. So the size of the mechs kind of fits within my idea of how big they are in that setting, really. But we'll see. Originally, I was thinking it being 6 mil, but it's much easier to kind of get 10, 15 mil terrain than it is 6 mil.
And you talk about how you're not going to let yourself go down the rabbit hole too far, but like I said, I noticed that you had already started developing background for it. I'm like, I think that slippery slope's already getting a little slippery there, Gav.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's more for my own sake of like, what do I need to do to get it finished in time? So it's like literally I have a board, some cards, some dice with stickers on.
That's cool.
And some models that I can play at this stage. And it's like, and the rules are notes to me. They don't have to be rules that somebody else can see. It's not a playtest version. It's just literally running a game for a bunch of people at a convention. And that's as far as it goes. And then after that, so that kind of gets me, that's been the push to get me to that stage. Then after that, hopefully it's just going to be playing with friends, going to local clubs maybe, and seeing who else I can get involved and things like that, and letting it kind of just grow from there. That's cool. I might take it to some other conventions later in the year, have some more models, develop the terrain a bit more, the rule set and things, and then in a year's time, we'll see where we're at.
Maybe go to Salute.
Maybe actually. It's hard to get to Salute these days if you're not. It's like you have to basically jump on board after the year you're in. If you say, if I want to be at Salute next year, then I need to kind of email them the day after Salute this year. So, but
I'm reminded of the folks that did the Mad Max game. I think that's kind of a similar. I'm sure they have their rules published somewhere, but it was really mainly a thing to show off the models and have a great time at Salute more than it was about publishing a game.
No, exactly. Is that the Gaslands guys? Is that
where they were all dressed up and
right?
Oh, that was so fun.
Yes. Yeah, but that's it. That's what I'm just thinking at the moment. It's kind of detaching myself from the professional side of it in a way, and everything I know about. It's not everything I know about developing games, but not getting hung up on the commercial aspects of it, and would I have a miniatures range attached and production and all this kind of stuff. I'm just thinking, no, just do it as a hobbyist at first. Make sure it's fun, enjoy it, create it. There's a bunch of guys I've kind of seen over the last year or two who've been doing that, and they've obviously, most of them culminating and running a Kickstarter, or they've actually started their companies and are selling the miniatures and things. Grand Arcanum Games, who do Roots of Magic. There's Paranoid Miniatures, who are doing Mythos. The guys who are writing Gaslands for Osprey later this year. All these guys, they were just playing at their club and went, the game I want doesn't quite exist yet. Open combat, like I say, it's a thing that it's an itch, which is why I settled on the mech game, I suppose, because I love big stumpy robots.
Oh yeah, who doesn't?
And things, but it wasn't quite the game. This game puts you in as a pilot. You're not a commander of a big. You have one mech. It's more like a first-person shooter in some ways than it is. It's not Titan Legions, Adeptus Titanicus, even 3 or 4 Titans. It's just you, one Titan. You're in charge. You're manipulating where the power goes. It's detailed but free-flowing sort of thing. So that was kind of the game I wanted to play. I've always wanted something that kind of puts you right in there in the cockpit sort of thing. So
that's cool.
So I've decided to write it.
That's great. Yeah, I'm reminded of my wife and I are watching this Anthony Bourdain show called Parts Unknown, where he goes around to different countries and learns about their culture while sampling their food. And there's this one restaurant in Copenhagen where after a long and grueling week, all the chefs, all the line cooks and the chefs get together. They stay late on Saturday, and they bring their newest creations to show everyone. And everybody tries it and critiques it, and they eat it, and they critique it. And this one guy, everybody applauds his work, what he did, because it was so amazing. And Anthony asked, "So are you going to put that on the menu now?" And he's like, "No." Everybody just looks at him like he's crazy. Like, no, we're not going to put this on the menu. We're doing this to explore our creativity. We're not doing this. This isn't a competition to get your stuff put on the menu. This is for the pure enjoyment of the craft.
Yeah,
that's cool. Well, is there anything?
That's it, really. I think. Yeah. Because I think actually if you start making compromises from the outset about what you think would appeal to a certain audience, or you're worrying about, well, actually, what's the product going to be? I think you start limiting yourself. Whereas I think the challenge is, if I do want to turn it commercial later on, it will be, this is the game, this is everything it needs. How do you make that work in terms of something that you can sell to people? And I think it's better to go that way rather than trying to tick boxes earlier on or limit yourself to how you're going to do it.
Right.
That said, I can't help but have conversations with other guys I know, like Carl from Second Thunder and things, where we go, yeah, but you are going to do this, aren't you? No, don't let me focus just on this. I'm not thinking about what's going to happen down the line. Is it going to be a box? Is it going to be a book? Is it going to be? It's like, no, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's going to be a bunch of notes on my iPad.
It'll be whatever it needs to be to have a great time. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Love to hear that. So is there anything else coming up, Gav, that you want to talk about or promote that folks should go check out right away?
Well, I've got my, I suppose, just talking about some non-Black Library stuff and sort of like the Snowbooks type thing. There's another series, I can't remember if I mentioned it to you guys before, but there's another series I've been writing for, a novella for, which is called Cryptid Clash. Okay. So, again, along with some guys like David Annandale, Clint Werner, and a few others, we're doing a series of novellas from a company called 18th Wall Productions, based in the States, I think. And they're essentially sort of cryptid, so like, cryptozoological animals like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, the famous ones. But
this looks hilarious.
But meets the kind of Universal Monster Mash type movie. So it's like Wolfman versus the Mummy, but it's Yeti versus Bigfoot, or whatever. So I've done one which is called talking about sort of taking the stories into sci-fi. So again, set in this universe I've been developing, quite on a tangent, which is called Conquest of the New World, spelled NU World. About, it's kind of a bit of a riff on aliens. It's a bit of having a bit of fun with it as well, but. So it's about losing contact with this colony, and then they find out there's these cryptids have been genetically engineered and getting caught in between and all this kind of fun stuff. So that's just one of the, I think there's 7 of us working on this. They'll be released as sort of ebooks and paperbacks. Not quite sure what the release date is, but that's quite fun. It's just something, I quite like sort of that kind of cryptozoology. I'm not an expert on it and stuff, but I've kind of had my nose in it for quite a few years and that kind of stuff. So there was a few like-minded people came together, and over a conversation went, actually, this would be cool. Let's do this. It's not going to pay the bills too much, but actually it'll be fun. It's be fun to write, and so that's where we've ended up.
That is so much fun. That is really cool. Yeah. And yes, I can definitely see David Annandale getting up in that. Like, seriously.
Yeah. Oh, Josh Reynolds, of course. Yeah, he's the other main. Who's basically the main instigator and co-editor on the series. Really, is Josh Reynolds, who again is a big into his sort of Fortiana and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. That's fantastic. That sounds like a lot of fun. Folks should check that out. All right. Well, that's fantastic. Why don't we take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll start talking about The Beast Arises, The Beast Must Die.
Brilliant.
All right, cool. Greetings, mofos.
Are you out of George Dickel number 8, staring at a broken chess machine?
Well, don't want to spend the rest of the year tied to that couch?
Well, why don't you head on over to the 1 Hour a Night Facebook page and see what exciting stuff is going on there. It's a place to post all your daily progress in the hobby grind, as well as receive and give positive feedback. Also, there are usually a few interesting challenges going on.
That's right. All you have to do is search for 1 Hour a Night on Facebook. That's numeral 1 Hour a Night, all one word. Blood serum tests will be administered prior to approval.
Sett til helvete og kom dere vekk. Det er ikke en bikkje, det er en slags ting. Den imiterer en bikkje, men det er ikke det. Kom dere vekk, idioter!
What he said.
Transmission incoming from the Adeptus Terra podcast. A new monthly UK-based 40K podcast has come into the universe, based around the hobby as a whole and the rich background of the 41st millennium. If you're looking for a fun, chilled-out podcast focusing on the fluff of the 41st millennium, with tricks and tips on taking part in the hobby, then why not give us a listen? You can find us on iTunes and Facebook as the Adeptus Terra podcast. You never know, you might just like it. Message ends.
NGC 40K, where the story meets the table.
Join the hosts at Pete's Bar as they explore the craft behind the models, the story behind the scenarios, and the camaraderie behind the game.
Listen to the podcast and join in the discussion at ngc40k.com.
The Nova Open Charitable Foundation opened its first online raffle of 2017 today with the burning of Prospero. All 37 models have been painted, photographed, and posted on the website. The models are gorgeous, painted by 8 members of our talented consortium who, combined, have won 4 Slayer Swords, 70 Golden Demon Awards, and 15 Crystal Brush Awards in their many years of painting. These include Chris Borer, Damon Drescher, Rich Erickson, Jeff Jenkins, Celso Mendez Jr., David Paulus, Brian Saab, and Dave Taylor. This short 27-day online raffle will end with the winner being drawn at the 2017 Las Vegas Open on Sunday, February 5th, 2017 at 3 p.m. PST. 95 cents of every dollar raised in this raffle will go directly to Doctors Without Borders. We are once again grateful to KR Multi-Case for once again stepping up to provide the foam and transport case for the models and game accessories for this offer. They never let us down. TNT Laserworks LLC, another returning sponsor of NOCF raffles, is providing the Burning of Prospero offer with standard 30K Thousand Suns and 30K Space Wolves templates, which will be included for the winner. Thanks to TNT Laserworks LLC. You can buy tickets at thenovaopenfoundation.org. If you have any questions, you can write to us at novaopencharities@gmail.com. Once again, that's novaopencharities@gmail.com. Thanks. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us, and I guess we'll get into The Beast Arises, The Beast Must Die. Now, you know that there is a B movie out there called The Beast Must Die? It's about,
right? No, I did not know that.
It's about Grand Moff Tarkin fighting a werewolf. Or he is the werewolf, I'm not sure. But right. Yes, it's Grand Moff Tarkin fighting a werewolf. So folks should check that out.
Well, the first thing was that actually I was quite disappointed in the end, actually, because all the way through my synopsis and my pitch and my synopsis and stuff, The Beast Must Die had an exclamation mark on the end. It was always had to be, The Beast Must Die.
Yeah.
And I wanted that as actually in the title, but they they didn't go with it in the end. They took the exclamation mark off.
Aw, Black Library should understand.
Title, go full out.
They should understand that in the world of Games Workshop, if you put an exclamation point at the end of something, it adds a level of excitement and fun. Like Tank Shock. Tank Shock isn't Tank Shock. It's Tank Shock! Because it has a damn exclamation point at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Look out, sir! Would not be look out, sir.
Look out, sir. Look out, sir.
Oh, fantastic. So, we had a lot of fun with this book. Jason, you weren't here for the last episode. I apologize for that, but, I commented that this is probably, and I hate saying who's my favorite, whatever, especially when we have BFF and friend of the show, David Annandale, contributing to the series, but I feel like this is my favorite book in the series so far.
Okay, that's cool.
Like, so far, like, what is this, book 8 now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was book 8, yeah.
And it's, there's a lot of reasons for that. It's just this great mixture of fun and things kind of coming to a head, things are falling into place, and it's not that the book ends at a high note, but it ends in a way that a lot of things happen during the book that I enjoyed, and I think that's really what makes me feel that way.
Okay, cool. I definitely had it was a very different experience writing this compared to The Emperor Expects, just pacing wise and the scope of it, because essentially it's, apart from the very opening, it's one battle start to finish.
Yes.
In quite a focused way. So trying to keep the momentum going. The thing I kept going back to, both when I was listening to it, but just thinking about it as well, is Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
You just start and it just doesn't stop until it stops.
It's relentless.
There's no, we'll take a little breath and we'll establish some characters here and we'll have a little... No, it just basically, once the pedal hits the metal, it just keeps going. And that was kind of the inspiration for doing The Beast Must Die. Once the fighting starts, it just keeps going.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. The previous book, The Hunt for Vulcan, which we could have just named it The Fight for Vulcan, because that was one battle too. And that was a lot of fun. But this one, it was very much a single narrative. And, one of the things that we commented on at the end, and I think it was James, one of our friends, who said, this could have, tack on about 100 pages. This could have been the end of the series. Because, we do have to go through the one event in Imperial history that I think that this whole series kind of was always intended to wrap up with. And you'll have to do that, but really, we could have just had this, and that would have been great. But it was a lot of fun. There's a few things that I'd like to kind of just lightly touch on. I don't know if Jason, if you have any other notes that you want to touch on, but one of the things I thought was interesting was Vulcan's disdain for the church. I thought that was really great, and some of the scenes with Vulcan and having Bohemond there to kind of bounce off those comments, I thought that was really interesting. He almost had this. He's the basically chapter master of the Black Templars, the Grand High Marshal, I think
that's
it is.
Right. Yeah.
And he's kind of looking a little ashamed in a couple of scenes here. I thought that was
one of the things, one of the things that's kind of established, and for me was kind of exciting about writing this one in particular, but the series in general, which is, being set at that different time when the ecclesiarchy is new. Obviously, we see some of the founding of the religious side of the Imperium in the Horus Heresy and kind of some of the cults start to grow, but actually this is where it's become part of the Imperium itself, part of the machine driving the Imperium. And so, but even so, it's still kind of finding its place. And so it's fun with the Black Templars who have slid into this worship of the Emperor and are almost there full out kind of. They've not kind of come out in terms of admitting the Emperor's a god to all their pals, really. And that's what's quite fun. It's still they're kind of, their faith is hidden at the moment, and they're just about ready to, because it's becoming accepting in the Imperium itself, they're just about ready to admit this to everybody else. And then suddenly Vulcan turns up, who is from the time of the Emperor, spoke to the guy himself, and it's like, what's all this religious shit? It's kind of like,
yep,
what's going
exactly.
on? It's like, this was not the secular empire that I was founding. I don't have time to deal with that now, but yes.
And I think Vulcan very much, he's very much interested not in micromanaging anything having to do with the Imperium. He wants to sit at his hobby desk and build models.
Yes. Well, it kind of is. I mean, the other fun thing I had was, in the chapters where Vulcan features and having these tiny little monologues at the start in his head where he's clearly not well. We don't know exactly what he's been through. Well, you guys don't anyway.
Oh, wow!
But
wow!
But yeah, where they brought him, what he ends up, where he ends up in the heresy and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of like he's fairly broken, even though
yeah.
And one of the themes of the heresy and particularly beyond is that with the Emperor gone, with like essentially the legions of Astartes broken stuff, there is no place for the Primarchs. They don't belong. Korax kind of comes to this revelation slowly and stuff. And Vulcan's one of the ones that survives, but like Guilliman and like Dawn and things, it's like there's no place for them really. They don't belong in this, and and Guilliman is smart enough that he realizes they just have to hand it all over to the humans, to the normal guys, and if they're going to screw it up, they're going to screw it up. And essentially Vulcan buys into that, and so when he comes back, when he gets involved again, he is very much, his approach is, no, don't put me in charge. Last time we were in charge, we broke the whole thing, and yeah, you're making an awful job of it, but you're the humans, it's your job to make an awful job of it. You were just, it's the one ring, it's like, do not give me this power.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
He's determined that Corland has to be, the Lord Commander, that everything, he's the figurehead, he is kind of the power behind the throne in some ways, but he doesn't want to come back because he doesn't belong there anymore. And the ecclesiarchy, the politics and stuff is all just symptomatic of why he doesn't belong there anymore.
Right. He can't upset 1,500 years of, I guess, progress by his appearance. I mean, that would cause. Yeah. I mean, we saw that with the way that the chapters, like the Imperial Fists, just their with all of their similarities. They should be the ones that get along the best, all the Imperial Fist successors. But even there, you have these divisions that have grown over 1,500 years. And can you imagine what it would be like if Vulcan came back and said, "Oh yeah, this ecclesiarchy thing, we can't do that anymore." When you have billions of people devoted to the worship of the Emperor, what would happen if he did that?
Exactly. It's one of the interesting things, sort of like writing, particularly the Black Templars, and it reminded me of some of the stuff I did in my earliest days at GW, actually, because when I worked on the Sisters of Battle Codex and writing the background for the Age of Apostasy, and that ends with, of all things, an alliance between the Black Templars and the Adeptus Mechanicus attacking Terra and the ecclesiarchy. And you just think, wow, it's gone full circle. So here... this is the seeds of something that happens 4,000 years later in the Age of Apostasy, where you've got Terra as the focus and the ecclesiarchy and the Black Templars involved. And that was cool. That made me want to write some Age of Apostasy stuff.
I sure hope it did.
Yeah, I want to go back and write some stuff about the Wars of Faith when the ecclesiarchy was set up, just after the heresy, when there's all these competing sects and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, and it's what's great about The Beast Arises and being set in like the 32nd millennium, where all those assumptions about the omnipotence of the church, of the ecclesiarchy in the 41st millennium, where nobody would dare stand against it and it's just part of the furniture. Here it's very much kind of the new guy on the block in some ways.
Yeah, it's very, there's a couple things having to do with Bohemond that were a little disappointing, yet we had a little bit of redemption at the end. Like he actually was right with his divining of the location of the beast.
Yeah.
And like their faith was actually deflecting the psychic power of the orcs, which we did see in a previous novel. So it is unfortunate that he's right and that he has some kind of power. Yeah. But then at the end we have Corlin punching him right in the face and decking him out. So that felt really good. So I feel like there was a great balance there.
Oh, but that was it, really. It was one of those things where I needed, because of all the other events and because obviously a lot of the focus in Vulcan stuff, Corlin needed a victory.
Yeah.
At this point, and his victory, and it's whenever I talk about sort of writing and things, there's two things: there's the external conflict and the internal conflict. And actually, that although they're kind of related, it's only by resolving the internal conflict that the character wins. Mm-hmm. So although actually hunting down the beast, attacking Olenor is the external conflict, actually the internal conflict is Corlin has to take over. He has to become the guy everybody needs him to be, and that's the moment he does when he turns around and decks.
Yeah, he says
Boromon and just says, like it or lump it. It's kind of like he knows he's not the best, but he's been put in this position. He's the Imperial Fist. Shut up.
You are absolutely correct. I mean, you wrote the thing, so I guess I don't have to tell you you're correct. But that's exactly what that we definitely had that conversation where it's like we're pretty sure that is that moment. That moment right there is the moment that Vulcan was working towards. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly it. He's setting up and he's created a successor to himself by forcing him to take those decisions and essentially allows him to do what he does at the end, which is he's not only just stepped away, but he can, in conscience, feel that he's left the command in safe hands, that the Lord Commander can cope with what's coming on, so he can do what he can do and confront the beast, and in kind of fairly spectacular fashion as well, but. Which was good fun as well, being able to... There's only a couple of books, really, where we get to have a bit of a knockabout with a Primarch. And I got to write one of them, so that was
cool. That's excellent, yeah. So, speaking of big stompy robots, oh, man, I love the fact that you just said, you know what, let's just make this entire city Metroplex from the Transformers, because everybody's going to love that, and we did.
Yeah.
And it really solidifies, I think, from a storyline standpoint, it's very clear that this is as much a conquest as showing how orc society has developed into this, the fact that this is not just a war of might, but a holy war of kind of culture. A cultural holy war as much as anything else.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I wanted to do was on several levels, because we've always talked about, through the series about, the next stage of orc evolution, what happens, the psychic gestalt, all that kind of thing. And so there, at the heart of it, on Ulanor, which has got to be the apex of orc civilization, and literally civilization being a proper orc city with all the technology, but also all the culture that you would get in a city. And little nods towards, and just having, again, talking about, the religious aspect of the Black Templars and the ecclesiarchy, and actually just doing a bit of a mirror on that with the orcs. And the orcs have developed religion as well. And, that's just a bit of a personal thing for me, but just that idea, culture and religion and all that kind of thing. And then basically all the way through the series, it's like, it's the opposite. It's what if the orcs were unified and the humans were, couldn't get their act together. Whereas normally it's like, well, the orcs can never unify. That's the thing that's always kept them down. Something's unified them, and that's it. And you go, well, of course. But it feels like the orcs are aping humanity, but they're not. They're just gone on a different but similar
trial and error
cultural trajectory.
Yeah. I love the fact that you were developing the orc or this orc culture, and I was wondering if there was some kind of chicken and the egg going on here. I don't know if you can answer this question, but I'm wondering, and one of the things we were wondering about is this kind of is the way that you've been developing the orcs in this series, is this the way they are And or have always been, or is this how the current orc culture developed? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not sure if I'm expressing that correctly.
Well, for me, and the way I've kind of going back to a lot of the original orc background in Wild the Orcs and things like that, and although it's kind of changed in presentation, essentially it's the same. The orcs were created by this Old One race.
Yeah.
Either the Krork or the Brain Boys or whichever iteration it is, but the Eldar and humans and stuff, all these various survival plans for the Great Galactic Catastrophe 60 million years ago or whatever it was. And the idea being, whether it was the Brain Boys died out or Enslaver Plague or whatever, that top echelon of the Orcs got taken out. And so there's this, the Orcs were always designed as this self-replicating army. Mm-hmm. That was the thing, is they go in, they orcify a place, the spores, everything else, they devour places just as much as the Tyranids in a way. They just orcify it, and that's the thing, is they're unstoppable. But actually, this particular ingredient was removed at a time, and so they could never quite actually, whether deliberately, they were never, perhaps they were designed to always end up collapsing amongst themselves. Because why would you create an army that could turn on you?
Yeah.
Back to the Legions of Astartes and the Emperor and all that kind of stuff. But also. Or is it a case that actually, like I said, this was what was meant to be created. This was the Orc civilization that was meant to have been, and actually, and never quite managed it. Apart from suddenly this grace period of 1,500 years when everyone thought they were dead, and actually they've just been building and keeping quiet. And the beast, this apex orc, has arrived and filled in that void again, and allowed this massive, great evolution and cultural expansion again.
Much like a wildfire in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, you might have this choked, sickly, hindered forest, and you have this giant wildfire, and all of a sudden you can the forest can grow within a few years to be bigger and better than it was before.
Yes, yeah, that's it, and it's and I like to think that it's the latter. I think this was meant to be. This was what that actually disaster stopped this happening. I like the idea that everyone likes to kind of write off the Orcs as this kind of barbaric, sort of fractious plague, but
monsters.
Nothing more. Yeah, monsters, exactly, barbaric monsters and nothing more. But actually, a whole bunch of the worlds of the Imperium are feudal worlds or medieval worlds or even previously technologies. It's like, it's only because they get to write the history that they pretend they're actually any more advanced than the Orcs. All they are is better, is better at writing the story down. And so this is, there's no reason but for a quirk of fate, millions of years ago, or maybe not even that long ago, that the Orcs couldn't have been in the position where the humanity is now. Humanity could be the disparate, guys running around with rocks, clubbing people over the head, who are constantly raiding the outposts of the Orc civilization. And who knows, maybe the Orcs would have done a better job at surviving chaos and everything else. Because that was the point, Eldar, humans, Orcs and stuff, were supposed to survive these various predatory attacks and whatever else. And they might have been better able to do it than we were, but unfortunately we'll never find out. So suddenly you haven't got the usual dynamic of the barbaric Orcs attacking the Imperium, but you've got, as you said earlier, a clash of civilizations, actually, which is more scary in a way, because neither can back down. It is mutually assured destruction, or one has to win. There can't be it's okay. It's Persia and Greece.
Let's agree to disagree does not exist when you're talking about ideology.
No, exactly. And as much as the Orcs, I think, I kind of took the mickey a bit by sending some diplomats, some talkie boys. I think that was kind of that's more of a, just so you know, we could talk peace, but we're not going to.
Yeah, we're not here to compromise. We're here to give you the opportunity to surrender.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Which is a very Orc thing to do. It's like Orcs don't want to just beat you; they want you to know they've beaten you.
That was one of my favorite parts of the whole series when they came, and I think this whole thing was punctuated at the end when Vulcan has thrown his hammer at the orc and missed. And the orc and the beast looks at him and he says very clearly, "Just like the Emperor, you have thrown away your most powerful weapon." Yeah. I read that like twice, 3 times. I'm like, what did he just say?
Yeah.
That I mean, yes, the ambassadors were a very strong note that this is going to be a lot harder than we thought. But an orc with the prescience and the knowledge and the actual the ability to put those things together and form that sentence at all means that humanity is in big trouble.
Yeah. Well, that was it. I think that was kind of the idea, really. Yeah, was the idea. This because it's called the Beast, and all the way through it's orcs. You go, well, they've ascended, but actually, they're still everyone in their head is still thinking, yeah, but the orcs and the Beast, he's big and his thing and his big stompy thing, and we know, that's how orcs work. Is you go, yeah, but he's smart. It's just like it's not just he's the biggest, therefore he's in charge. You go, no, this is a different thing. This is not the warlord times 10. This is the Beast. This is something else with a cultural memory of someone like the Emperor, who's deliberately mocked the Emperor's achievements and kind of like and has avenged. His purpose is to avenge the raising of Olenor by the Emperor, and somehow, and we don't even quite know how, but has replicated in many ways the Imperial Palace on Olenor, but written in an orky form, just to spite the people, to basically say, no, I'm the Emperor of the orcs, and don't forget it. Not just that I'm the biggest orc. I'm the orc equivalent of the Emperor. I'm just getting started.
Did you just confirm that the Imperial Palace is a transformer?
Yeah, but I didn't say which one.
So we have a few more things. One thing is, at least we know that the Imperium is starting to come around a little bit, at least under Corlin's command, because at least at this point they knew they were going into a trap, whereas before no one has been able to figure that out. This time, however, they figured it out ahead of time. It just didn't matter. So hopefully,
but that was always quite. Yeah, that was the fun bit, really. I missed the trick there. Actually, it's one of the things, and one of the comments afterwards, which I kind of agree with totally, because everyone's saying, "Oh yeah, but why didn't they just try exterminatus?" And the idea being is like, no, they need to know the beast is dead, and they can't be quite sure. But actually, it made me think in retrospect, I really, really wish I'd written a scene in which they tried.
Oh yeah.
That they break through into orbit, they unleash the virus bombs, and they don't work. And just the looks on their faces.
Well, at the end of the day, virus
they're still
bombs...
broadcasting. It didn't make any difference. They found an antidote.
Yeah. Oh, that would make it even
We've got
better.
to go down.
That would have been.
Would have been cool.
Yeah.
So it's kind of assumed that they've kind of gone through that thought process, that they have to be sure. They need to see the body, but
Yeah, and I guess it helps to actually, I don't know. You don't want to science things up too much, obviously. I mean, but I can't imagine that planet I can't imagine anyone being able to launch missiles at that thing and have them make it into detonation range.
No, exactly. But exactly. It would have been nice to show it. I think it's just one of those. It could have just been a short scene, deployed the torpedo, boom, torpedoes have disappeared off the scanners, and you don't even have to say, just go, no detonations recorded, and they're like, oh, still got to go in then.
All right,
but that was the whole kind of double bluff of just, we've come here to kill the beast, and there is no other way other than to put our heads right into the lion's mouth and hope it doesn't bite our heads off, because it's either put up or go back home. We know it's a trap. We can't do anything but stand in the trap.
Yeah.
So and the beast knowing this, it's like, again, he's one step ahead of him. He's smarter than
always one step. It is just I love watching that happen. And Jason, you added something to our bullet list.
Oh yeah. So I went back and looked at my notes on my phone, and chapter 4, we had the blood divination magic that the Black Templars, did. Yeah. And that really fascinated me, because they're these anti-psychers, yet this comes across as very psychic or, magic and involved in magic. And that fascinated me. And I actually, when I was reading that, I stopped reading, sent a text to both Adam and to James to say, hey, are you even on this book yet? Because this is back in November, I think, when I wrote this.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things we know is kind of quite prevalent through the Imperium, now, but dating back many, many years, is the idea of the Imperial Tarot, and the idea that the Emperor can still guide people, and Inquisitors make use of it. And it's been kind of played down a bit, I suppose, in particularly in the background, not necessarily in Black Library, but it used to be that, Imperial commanders and space marines and stuff would consult the Imperial Tarot a lot and things. So it's kind of this idea of the mysticism that surrounds the Emperor. And I thought a lot about, obviously there's a lot of the overt faith of the Black Templars and the ecclesiarchy, which is like the prayers and the shouting and all that kind of stuff. But what rituals do they literally have? If they believe in a god, what do? You pray to them and stuff. But actually, when you get really medieval and you're looking at relics and divination and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to get some of that into the Black Templars. They're really going down that supernatural route in a way that, they believe they've got, or at least Beaumont believes he's got the holy telephone that he can call up the Emperor and say, do we bombard him or do we land? And obviously, whether it's true or not, we don't know. As you mentioned earlier, it did kind of work in the end. But in the same way that, we've got living saints and all these kind of other potential manifestations of the Emperor's divinity. But actually, just as with the chaos powers, you go, well, the line between psyche and magic and religion and faith is, it's probably not even a continuum, it's just a big puddle, So, and it's one of the things I've always kind of been keen with the Black Templars is actually the hypocrisy of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can say one thing and do another, because it's, again, not just religion, but organisations and belief systems and everything are rife with that kind of thing of like, well, we'll make an exception to this. This one is beneficial to us, so we'll ignore it. And so the blood divination and also just kind of, I liked, but there's a bit of a joke in there as well, because it all boiled down to like basically closing his eyes and pointing at the screen. So
he did. That was the best.
Which kind of worked, but the other thing. Sorry, I have to mention this. It probably won't come up with a question. The other thing is, possibly the most disappointing edit I've ever received, which is the removal of just one word, which was there's a bit later on when sort of the orc kind of attack barges kind of break up from the city, and orcs are kind of teleporting down and packing down on top of the Black Templars.
That was the best scene. Sorry, go ahead.
Looks up and says, because they've been disappointed because the orcs haven't really given them much sport. And then he looks up and he just goes, "It's raining orcs."
Yes.
And in my original, he said, "Hallelujah."
Yeah, that would have been great. The Alleluia did come through.
Which I thought was, it's funny, but also it's just, he's so glad the Emperor's rewarded him by raining orcs. But just a good gag. But I didn't. It's implied now instead.
No, and it really is implied, because that's exactly how we read that line. Okay, don't worry about it. That is so great. Yeah, that was a good moment with the Templars. That was really funny. I love that. There's a lot of really great. There's a few really great scenes, and as I said, like the relationship between Dor and Zukov was fantastic, as their professional relationship developed during the battle, and just the whole, hey, look over here, you should have more faith in the Omnissiah, because check this out. It's like, what did you do to my command tank?
That's right.
What? We put a spaceship laser on it. What? That's what you do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was quite fun, because I was when I was going over the synopsis, or my original synopsis, with the editor Lindsay Priestley, and she said, and we were talking about cool stuff that we can put into the battles and things, and Adeptus Mechanicus, and she had this printout of from the forthcoming White Dwarf, which was of the Ordinatus that Forge World have done.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one they've done now, but And she's like, there's this cool thing, it's like, blah, blah, could we put one of these in? She's like, I'm sure I could get, you can take this and read up on what they are. And then I had to point out to her that I wrote the original Ordinatus epic article. I was very well aware of what they are, thanks. So it was really cool actually to go back to one of the things that one of the first articles I wrote for White Dwarf many, many years ago was for the Ordinatus. So to put one in here, Ordinatus Olenor, and kind of it's, of course, there's another joke in there as well, but it'll be more apparent at the end of the series. We'll have to talk about it again then, I suppose. But.
Okay. Yeah, of course we'd love to.
There's wheels within wheels and jokes within jokes, references and stuff to some of this.
Nice.
But pays off later.
I thought the description of Zukov was pretty cool. It reminds me very much of the new Magos model that the new plastic Magos model that Games Workshop has produced. I guess in some ways the resin as well, but he's a big tech priest.
Oh,
he's like the size of a tank.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things. He's kind of, again, this disassociation of the flesh and the idea of this consciousness, which is just kind of kept within a digital system almost, but which has kind of been pushed a lot with the. I had the latest Mechanicus Codex sort of thing as reference and things, which was kind of new at the time. But yeah, it's like obviously for a lot of tech priests and stuff, it's a tech priest with a few pipes out of his face and that's it. But actually, once you're up to a Magos and when you've been around, he's one of their prime war leaders who's been literally around for about 2 millennia in various guises, assimilating all this strategic data and taking part in all these battles and things. So the idea that the physical form is mutable, it's just, so he starts off, he's got this, I think again, there's a bit of a joke because he basically turns up, when he first turns up, he's a brain in a jar, and one of the Space Marines isn't very impressed. He knows he shouldn't judge him on, on size alone, but he doesn't look much like a war leader because he's a Futurama brain in a jar. But then later on, when he's in the ship, when he's in this great big kind of command pyramid thing, then he's kind of netted into all the systems. And then later on, when that gets destroyed, when he basically puts on his war body, which is this huge mechanical mini Titan thing, essentially, and that was it, it's because, and it's fun where this idea where you go, well, he's not, the bit that's outside him doesn't really bother him, it's had a few legs, how many brains do you want? They're all just kind of, it's all ephemeral to what he's linked to the Omnissiah. Plus, I just like, as we noted before, big stompy robot things.
Yes,
so.
well, clearly. What really endeared me to the Zukov character was his treatment of Laurentis, where all of these tech priests and Magi Magus have been treating him rather poorly. There's one point where there's this amusing exchange between Zukov and Delthrak, I believe.
Right, yeah.
He says, "Wait, have you not assimilated his recent treatise on the notional benefits of wrongness?" He's a genius.
Exactly.
like Laurentis's exploration of pretty much non-Mechanicus-y behavior is being ingested throughout the Mechanicus.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's kind of it. It's and it kind of plays to the theme of like the Imperium Mechanicum and stuff have become self-involved and things. So actually, it requires this absolutely paradigm-shifting thought process for them to break out of it.
Yeah,
they've become so embedded in their own ritual and things that, and of course, he's an absolutely heretical influence on everything around because he's broken. He's gone everything he's been through.
But he's broken in all the right ways.
Well, he's too human in a way. Because he's had these experiences and he's kind of actually developed some empathy again and all this weird stuff that he wasn't necessarily expecting to have. But it's absolutely what he's the ghost in the machine. He's the bit that's required to make it work again. And also he's I see him as he's a C-3PO character in a way. He keeps cropping up in these big places and having these little effects and stuff like that. But he's actually one of those, he's part of the continuity in a way, because he's literally been there from the beginning. alongside the Imperial Fists and kind of. And the journey he's had is a really interesting one, and you can only do that if you humanise him a little bit. I think he has to. You have to sympathise with him for a little bit.
Yeah, he's plucky. We like that.
Yeah, and he just won't stay down.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing I'm going to bring up is my favorite part of the whole book, and my favorite part of the whole series is where you decided, okay, I'm just going to take this chapter out of Gorka Morka and put it in the book, and screw everybody else. That's what's happening. So, and I believe you may have seen my post. Chapter 11, where we look at the orc culture in full. It's fully realized. Well, at least up to this point, shape, and it's great. I mean, clearly, orc rock bands playing on the back of pickup trucks is kind of the thing I'm into. So I was really pleased because I don't know if you've noticed this, but in recent years, a lot of people, even people who love the lore, I mean, even especially people who love the lore, have been trying to downplay the brutal whimsy of orcs, and it's really unfortunate because a little bit of camp isn't going to hurt you, and also you got to realize that the galaxy is millions of stars. You never know what you're going to get out of that, No.
And I think it's the texture. If it's unremittingly, they pull your arms off, and there's not really anything. The humour's dark. It's like orcs find ripping your arm off is scary. To orcs, it's funny, and then we find that funny kind of through that process. And I think like the idea of Gothic rockers or. Orc preachers dispensing magic, like blessed bullets into the masses.
It was so good. And
grots running around. Talk about Gorka Morka. Actually, really what I went back to was Bill King's stuff from the original Wildy Orcs and Makari de Gretchen and all these little stories of what's going on in Orktown and building up the war power until they built a Gargant and all this kind of stuff. Because that's, for me, that's still Orcs. And although there's had all these kind of cosmetic changes, as far as I'm concerned, and I think as far as most of the designers things are concerned and writers, none of that's been invalidated.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff has been toned down slightly, but actually blood axes are still blood axes and kind of like dress up like humans a bit and are sneaky, and bad moons are still bad moons. So there's no reason why, maybe we might ignore the Gene Stealer cult cornate, warbands or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. But actually, this is one of those ideas of going back to that, literally going back to the heyday of the orc culture in terms of the background, but also within the world itself. So you go, we've forgotten Gothic rockers and all the silly like squig sellers and all that kind of stuff. But actually, they're still there and they've come back.
Yeah, and I think that caps what seems to be one of the most interesting things about this book specifically. Maybe not the series as a whole, but I feel like this book is almost a love letter to the old background when it comes to the orcs and the Black Templars, and a lot of this stuff is a lot of things going on in this book remind people of kind of the fact that a lot of this stuff is still valid, and a lot of this stuff you should not ignore all the years and decades of work that's been put into this immersive world.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's where it comes from for me. As I say, it's the stuff that I was reading before I was working in a workshop, and the stuff that was being created in the earliest years I was there. So, I suppose it is the bit that I always run back to in a way. If I'm not quite sure how something works in 40k now, I just go back to what was said 20 years ago. Remember Gothic rockers? And I think there's just a general kind of, I think there's, with the Adeptus Mechanicus coming out as an army and Gene Stealer cults and things, there's more of an atmosphere of that in general, I think, of just, well, we haven't talked about this stuff for a while, but it went away, but it was never removed. It was just, there wasn't the kind of excuse to talk about it.
Yeah, we have the means now, right? Like Games Workshop has gotten so good about being able to put out models and stuff that we can have all these things now, and it's great.
Yeah, well, for me, that's exactly the purpose of, and it's kind of gone back that way, the purpose of having Black Library, which is, you know, when you write a codex and you design an army and you talk about that army and the troop types, and you kind of give them a bit of context about the chapter's culture or the race that they're from or whatever else, but you can't go into too much detail, and you have to tell people about the guns and the troop types and the vehicles and everything else, and that fills up quite a lot of book. So Black Library is expressly there to fill in all the other stuff, not just to repeat that information, but to add depth, to add breadth to it, to place it in the universe in a way that you can't necessarily do. And Forge World does this really well, again, because they don't have to cover the basics in their books. They don't have to tell you what space means every single time. They can do the Badab War, or they can do, you know, Siege of Vrax or whatever, and build on the material and deepen it in a way that you can't necessarily do with a codex that has to be a first port of call, whether you're a veteran or a newcomer. So yeah, something like, you know, doing the Beast Arises is a love letter in a way, because it's like, well, nobody else will get to write about this, so I'm going to.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I love that kind of explanation about the purpose of Black Library, because the cynic is always saying how it exists to sell the models, where, you know, you got to think of it as a way to, like you say, to give context to why you're collecting, to give you context for your games and give you context for how you imagine your army would work, and the characters that you're painting and you're building, and like, oh yeah, this is the guy who did this. This is this knight, you know, this knight in my army. Yeah, she was at the battle of so and so and was involved with these other characters, and you can really develop and care about it, and that's what we want. We want that. Everybody wants that. So I love that kind of alternative, but actually really reason why Black Library does what they do.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of years when they were kind of folded in as part of GW Publishing, and it was very much, most of the stuff was still quite tied to the releases and things like that. And even then, I still think it added a lot of depth. But they've gone back to this is just kind of, there's obviously going to be the tabletop game there all the time in your head, but actually... Oh,
yeah. Can you mention this model here or that model there or whatever? Yeah.
Well, I don't know the game well enough these days to even get into that, so it's like... You know, I have to look it up and just think, those guys look kind of hard and they could probably beat those guys.
Yes.
That's always been the case, I suppose. But, but it's, you know, you think of the stuff that's been really popular, obviously the Horus Heresy, but, you know, like the Eisenhorn trilogy and Gaunt's Ghosts, and they're the things that actually stand slightly apart from the tabletop game. They add to it. They don't just replicate what's in the codex and battles. They broaden and they expand the universe, because, you know, if you're into the games or if you're just into the fiction or whatever it might be, you don't want to just keep reading about the same thing. It's kind of fun to read about the battles, but they're the bit you do with the miniatures. You want to know everything else around it. You get to tell the story of your miniatures. What's like, say, what's the context? Where did those characters come from? What's going to inspire you to create your own characters and narrative, aside from what's in the codexes? So, it's good fun. I mean, you know, the stuff I'm doing for Black Library going forward, like doing Adeptus Titanicus and the Eldar stuff and things, is really exciting. I'm really pleased with what I'm going to be working on. So
that's good.
Looking forward to it.
That's great. Now, I can't imagine a better punctuation for our conversation. Unless either one of you gentlemen has something to add.
You can find out everything you want to know at www.gavthorpe.co.uk. Sign up to my newsletter. Check me out on Twitter and Facebook. Awesome. That's all good. Happy to answer people's questions and all that stuff.
Great. So I guess that's it for episode 81 of Masters of the Forge. Next week we're going to be talking about the Wrath of Magnus. The week after that, we're going to talk about the Wrath of Magnus, and we're just going to try to get caught up with the current lore as it's been developing this year, because everything is getting exciting.
Oh, yeah.
So, but until then...
Play the game the way you want to.
Boom.
This podcast is protected by the Creative Commons Attribution, No Derivatives, Non-Commercial International License. More information about this license and contact information if you have any requests can be found at our blog, mastersoftheforge.com. The music used in this podcast was made by Podod of the duo Sublevel 3. The track is used with his permission.
It's such a good feeling to play games your way. It's such a happy feeling 40K'ing away. And when you throw dice with story in mind, it's such a wonderful way to unwind. It's a good feeling, a very good feeling, the feeling you know that we'll be back when the fortnight's new, and we'll have new ideas for you, and you'll have things you'll want to talk about. We will too.